Star Wars.
Good evening. Welcome to the July 9th, 2014 meeting of the Murfreesboro Planning Commission, which I have determined there's a quorum, so we'll call the meeting to order. We have two public hearings scheduled this evening, the first of which is a zoning application for approximately .58 acres at the north corner of the intersection of Love Court and Memorial Boulevard to be rezoned from RS-15 to Commercial Highway. Mr. Paul Meeks is the applicant. Ms. Green, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Our first public hearing this evening is for you to consider rezoning property, which is approximately 0.58 acres, so just a little over half an acre, from its current zone, which is RS-15, and that stands for Single Family Residential District, with a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet, to CH, and that would be Commercial Highway District. The property is identified on the map before you in the blue color, and it's the blue square. You can see that it is located north of Love Court and along the western side of Memorial Boulevard or Highway 231. The lot is a part of the Haynes Haven subdivision, which was developed in the 70s and 80s, early part of the 80s, as a residential subdivision. With the development of that subdivision, there were 4 residential lots that were created along Memorial Boulevard, one of which has become a part of the Adams Place development. The second lot is located south of Haynes Haven Lane and adjacent with a subject property and currently has a single-family home located upon it. There's this lot, which is currently undeveloped and vacant land, and then the property to the south of Love Court, the parcel on the corner, is also undeveloped. The owners have not made staff aware of any specific development plans for the property, and we've only had some conversations with them. With the owners, it is their belief that the property is no longer well suited for residential uses, so they've asked for the zoning change to be zoned CH. You can see that the properties to the north, west, and south are zoned RS-15. Across Memorial Boulevard are properties zoned CH, that's Highway Commercial District, and they're developed with some multifamily, or they're developed with some commercial uses. And just to the north, about 700 feet, is the Walmart, which is currently under construction. Staff became aware of some restrictive covenants that were on this lot that restricted the possibility of it being used for commercial purposes, and we've asked the applicant to look into that and how that would affect the property. We brought that up at the meeting when you scheduled this for a public hearing, and certainly I think we'll have some conversation about that this evening. We would like to conduct a public hearing prior to you making your recommendation regarding this zoning change to the City Council. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them either before or after the public hearing. And I've also got an ortho photo, which I've included in the exhibit so that you can see what's existing.
Okay. Any questions for Mrs. Green?
Ms. Green, just so that I make sure that I've got this straight in my mind, the corner property to the south, that's Mr. Smythe's turnip patch?
It is Mr. Smythe's turnip patch.
Okay. And
Yes, sir.
then the property we're talking about is actually bordered on 3 sides by residential structures?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And the one directly to the north of this, is it vacant or does it have a?
It's a single-family home that's currently occupied.
Okay. Where did you say there's an Adams Place?
And I don't know if you would want to look at the screen. I can show you on here. Maybe. The cable department will pull this map up. Okay. This was a parcel that was a part of the subdivision that's been absorbed into the Adams Place.
Oh, it was a
development.
part of Haynes Haven?
It was,
okay.
yep.
Okay, I see. I didn't quite get that. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Does the applicant have anybody to speak, make a presentation before we open the public hearing?
Nobody's let me know that they were going to. Okay. Mr. Clyde apparently will, but he didn't let me know before the meeting.
Okay.
Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Clyde Roundtree, Huddleston Steel Engineering. My address is 228 Bluegrass Circle. And on behalf of my client, I just want to kind of let you know kind of where we're at in the process. He's in the process of evaluating what the highest best use of this property is. We've met with Mr. Adelot and Mrs. Green in regards to this piece of property, and it's come to our attention that there's quite a bit of concern over how it's properly developed. And so we're looking forward to hearing the public feedback tonight to figure out what is the best thing we can do in order to maximize the potential of the property. There are 2 vacant lots. There's really 1 vacant lot that's concerned right now. It's been vacant for many, many years. And we have looked at the restricted covenants and reviewed those this afternoon. And one thing we found is that they for the most part, have expired as of January 1st, 2013. And to our knowledge, there's been no renewal of those. So that's just kind of where we stand with the restrictive covenant. However, we've gotten a lot of feedback from the community in terms of how this is going to impact their neighborhood. So again, we're looking forward to the feedback that they have and see if there's some place we can be along the commercial zoning that would make sense for the neighborhood as well as for the city and our client. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, before I open the public hearing tonight, let me briefly explain how we conduct our meetings. We'll open the public hearing. You'll have an opportunity to come forward to speak either for or against this proposal. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and give your address. Keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes, if you would. If you have questions, the staff will make a note of your questions and try to answer those at the conclusion of the public hearing. All that being said, I'll open the public hearing at this time, ask anybody to come forward that'd like to speak.
Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Mark Wood. I live at 107 Haynes Haven Lane. My property, the rear corner, touches the rear corner of the property under consideration for rezoning. And I'd like to bring to your attention some history of our neighborhood over the last 27 years. This is the minutes from the meeting 27 years ago when what Mr. Gilley referred to as the Turnip Green lot, which is behind SunTrust, lot number 22. And I'll make a brief comment, 2 things here. The building will look like an ordinary home. They wanted to put a daycare center there. At the end, it says, after discussion, Ms. Allen made a motion to deny the request. Seconded by Mr. Reeves, approval was unanimously denied. And then when we look at an additional denial, when they referred to the Adams Place property, 5 residential lots along Haynes Haven, lot 1 through 5, were RS-15 then, and they remain RS-15 today. The city council reviewed it. They listened to the concerns of the subdivision. They told them they could have access through lot number 3, but they would put berms, trees, and landscaping on those lots. They denied them access through lot 5 for a service entrance. And I'd like to say NHC is a good neighbor. Their place is beautifully landscaped, and it's a positive plus for Murfreesboro to have NHC. But they did not rezone those 5 lots. They're still RS-15 till today. A third part of our history happened on September 18th, 2002, when an individual wanted to rezone home number 1862 James Drive. They wanted to put a photography studio in, which would be a very light use of a home use. They were only going to use it for commercial use on weekends, with maybe 5 to 6 customers. And yet the city planning board, in their wisdom, listened to the residents and turned down that request. So before you, I will present to you to add to the records 3 denials of RS-15 that have occurred in our history. I also will present to you a petition signed by the residents of the subdivision. When NHC made their request, some 25 people showed up with 38 signatures on a petition. When the photo studio was under consideration, 3 individuals showed up with 22 petition signatures. I'm going to present to you tonight a petition containing 110 residents, 108 of which are in the Haynes Haven subdivision, and 2 which were relatives that were in the homes that evening. These 110 lot owners are asking you not to rezone this one lot. From an appearance standpoint, this would be a picture of what Andy Adams' home looked like when I first moved there. It was, they would board horses and colts, and it was a 2-lane road. Memorial was only 2 lanes then. Now it's 5 lanes. But NHC has done a good job. It was beautiful back then when it had horses on it, and it's beautifully landscaped now. One other thing I'd like you to consider is appearance. This is my home at 107. It's not the nicest home in the neighborhood, nor is it the best landscaped home in the neighborhood. But I try to keep it neatly, keep the home neat, and keep the appearance pleasant to the neighbors. We've got a curved sidewalk with river rock. The mulch was completely replaced this year because Bermuda, it just takes over and you have to just completely redo it. In comparison to that, I'd like you to take a look at the picture of the lot under consideration. I'm standing in the ditch line next to this lot looking at the Love Court sign, and the weeds are 5 and 6 feet tall. Standing on the sidewalk with my back to Memorial, this is an 8-foot tall 2x4, painted white with red marks every 12 inches. And you can see the weeds are up 7.5 feet high. This is a picture standing inside of the lot under consideration, looking toward Memorial and O'Reilly's. You can see the height, 7.5, 9 feet. There is a difference between the pride of home ownership and the pride that people take care of the way they maintain their lots, and an individual that doesn't live in our subdivision and lives in another subdivision and has this lot in hopes of flipping it for commercial at some point in the future. The Turnip Green lot that was referred to earlier is behind SunTrust. It's lot number 22. And we'll give a little free advertisement to our politicians in the area. But the top of this sign is 5 feet off of the ground. And you can see that there's dead turnip greens, there's milk thistle, and there's Johnson grass that is 5 feet tall in this lot, which the Brooks probably will speak to when they get up here tonight. It's a good home for mosquitoes, but not a pleasant sight for our neighborhood. Our neighbors used RS-15 lots for several different things. One of our residents is suffering from the effects of Agent Orange, and others have breast cancer, prostate cancer. I'm recovering from prostate cancer. I've been to Houston, Texas 5 times. So you need a place that's a safe haven. It's a school zone. It's kids on bicycles. There are 15 available commercial sites up and down a 2-mile radius. If there's 15 available sites available, I don't think this area needs to be rezoned. I've got several other comments, but I need to try to keep my time limited. Thank you, and do you have any questions for me before I sit down?
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Who would like to be next?
Hello, I'm Gail Hendricks. I live at 103 Haynes Haven Lane. Now, my property backs up to the lot that they're talking about. I'm here to obviously oppose this rezoning request. We're already seeing the effects of the commercial development all around us, and in particular the Walmart development, which is now visible from my front porch. The utility and highway changes are already continuing, and I'm not sure what further impact that's going to have, but they've already messed up my front yard with gas line problems. I have a concern about the increased traffic and safety, in particular when we see that Walmart open. That's not even happened yet. It's just under construction, but I'm very concerned about that. Our neighborhood has a lot of active walkers, people out walking their dogs and so forth, and it's a wonderful place to live. It has been for quite some time, and we want to keep it that way. I called the minute I got this notice and tried to get more information, and Mr. Roundtree returned my call, but that was not until yesterday to try to make some explanation, and I just feel like that there's not been sufficient notice about all of this, and obviously I want to oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks.
Good evening. My name is Arun Pranjape. I think I'm standing too close here. I am a retired physician residing with my wife at 106 Love Court, which is right next to the lot 15 under proposal for rezoning. I purchased this house way back in 1987. At that time, I happened to meet the original owner of lot 15. When I asked I don't know his name, when I asked the owner if he would be interested in selling the lot, he replied that he is keeping the lot for his son, who in future would like to build a home there. Being a naive person that I am, I believed him and thought that it would be safe to buy this house without worrying about the possibility of Lot 15 turning into a commercial establishment. That is why when I retired in 2004, my wife and I both decided to stay in the same house since it was so nice and peaceful. In the last 10 years, however, things have changed tremendously. Because of ever-increasing traffic congestion, air and noise pollution. Now, as far as traffic is concerned, as you may know, lot of people are using Love Court as a shortcut to Northfield Boulevard. Those who are driving on the Memorial Drive, they use it as a shortcut to Northfield Boulevard. If we get another commercial establishment in that area, more people will use that as a conduit to Northfield Boulevard. You may know that this is also an area where a lot of children, because of the nearby school, they are either playing or riding bikes. My grandchildren ride bikes there sometimes, and I'm really concerned about that. You know, if the traffic keeps on increasing like this, it will be very difficult. The other thing is that to get an access from Love Court to the Memorial Drive, either turning left or right, the traffic as it is so congested that it's extremely difficult and dangerous, as a matter of fact, to turn on that left side particularly. And because of this commercial establishment, it is likely to increase even more. It will make it almost impossible to turn left or right. And my wife and I both have a lot of medical problems, such as cardiopulmonary disease, diabetes, and all kinds of things. And we have to visit doctors quite frequently. And we are forced to drive from Love Court to Memorial. And I'm really worried about this part, that one of these days we are going to get into an accident because of this. So in view of danger to the children and elderly people, I would fervently hope that you would take all these matters into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Mike Bowman. I reside at 123 Love Court, the easiest address in Murfreesboro to remember. I live there with my wife and 3 children and have lived there for over 14 years now. And one of the things that impressed us about this area was that we could literally live within 1 mile of our house with all the conveniences that anyone could ever ask. Now we've got 4th of July in our backyard. How much more can you ask for, right? But with an addition to Walmart, we literally can live within a half a mile of our location at this time. When I received word about this meeting, I decided to take a little drive through the business section of our area, and I believe a community is only great with the combination and mixture of things. However, I also believe that there is a right place for things. And I drove across the street over to Uptown Square and was able to see that there are currently 7 office suites located there available for lease. Over at Liberty Square, I found 3. And then also at Heritage Park, I found 5, which, Mr. Wood, I believe that adds up to 15. Now, if I wanted to get really ambitious, I could go over to Northfield Boulevard, where Jim in the Box is now available, as well as the former location for the North Side Liquors. But while I was driving, I was reminded of the children's show I used to watch as a kid and with my children, Sesame Street. And while driving around, I kept singing this song, which one of these things are not like the other? As I drove down Heritage Park Drive, Ward, Uptown Square, MTCS Boulevard, and then also our street, Love Court, I kept asking, which one of these is not like the other? And it's my request for the council today to keep Love Court exactly that, a lovely place to live, and ask that you keep it not like the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Tina Martha Whitfield. My husband Donald and I live at 206 Haynes Haven Lane. We bought our home in 1988 and have lived there for 26 years. We've since made 2 improvements on our structure, one in 1996 where we had an addition put on the back of the house, and again in 2007 we made an improvement to the front of our home. We intend to stay there, stay where we live. We love our neighborhood. It's been a peaceful place to live and raise our 2 children who are now grown and out of the nest. I understand from a business standpoint how Mr. Meeks would like to turn his property from residential into commercial. He purchased it in 2008 for $50,000, and public record now shows that it's valued at a little over $51,000. He could increase that 7 or 8-fold possibly for a commercial price, possibly. However, we would highly like to keep this a residential area, keep it zoned residential. As those who've gone before me said, there is no need for more commercial property in our area. I did the same thing and investigated all the vacancies and found the same to be true in each area. I can give some addresses, but I won't take our time to do that. My husband and I walk our 2 dogs daily in our neighborhood, and we see many other people out walking, children riding their bikes, mothers with strollers. It is a neighborhood where people do walk up and down, and it's a pretty limited neighborhood. We're surrounded with commercial on Heritage Park, and it's nice to have these 2 streets, parallel streets of Haynes Haven and Love Court, remain residential. So we are opposed to the rezoning. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Ms. Whitfield. Anybody else?
My name is Kenneth Brooks. I live in Lot 23, which is directly across from the lot that's in question. Lot 22 is you've referred to as the Turnip Green lot, so I'm right next to that lot. We purchased that lot 28 years ago. When we purchased the lot, all that in was empty lots. They're all approximately a half an acre. They were designed to be residential. They've been residential for 28 years, and as Mark spoke on, they've 3 times they've tried to change some of them. The whole community of over 150 families all want them to be commercial. Our whole community has been paying city and county taxes for 28 years. And for one special interest to open that lot up to commercial right in the middle of our residential, and it was never designed to be. And I want to make a correction to what she said. The lot in question is not adjacent to Love Court. That lot is on Love Court. That lot's had a Love Court address for over 20 years, and it's now they've tried to change the address to be a memorial address, but it's always been a Love Court address. And all we're asking is to leave our residential community and let it stay there safe and sound as it can. And everyone that lives there unanimously is requesting y'all do not let a special interest or somebody can make a profit off of us having it moved from what it's always been, what it was designed to be, and I cannot see how a half an acre could support a residential business and have parking. So that's all I have to say. I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Anybody else?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Delbert Adams. I live at 1839 James ever since 1978. When I moved to this area, there was only 3 or 4 other houses that were occupied. There was dirt roads, and we had to come in through Love Court to get down to James Drive. Northfield Boulevard was built sometime after that. Where the Northfield Elementary School is now was just a big field. You could dove hunt there at that time. I think Mr. McClanahan that started this subdivision would turn over in his grave if he knew that this was going to be zoned commercial in this lot up here. I'm opposed to it. I don't see that we need it. As a lot of people have already stated, there's plenty of places around here that are vacant for commercial use. I just wanted to say that I'm opposed to it, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Yes, sir.
My name's Rick Sanderson. Me and my wife Jolene have lived on Love Court since '91, so like 23 years. One of the points brought up from the person trying to sell the lot was, from what I understood, was that he couldn't sell it as a residential lot, and as long as I've lived there, I've never seen a for sale sign on that lot, so I don't get, that to me doesn't make any sense. If that was one of their strong points, I think that's never been proven from their end. So that's one thing, and I live at the other end of the street, Love Court, and I'm assuming that if that business is there, they're going to have people coming in, cars coming in, and most likely if you go out one time to get out on Love Court, you're going to want to turn around the next time and take a right. So you can, instead of being a commercial traffic coming in, it becomes residential, people running through the subdivision, and we live, like I said, that road, Love Court, tees into James Drive, and that stop sign there is treated like a yield sign at best by most people. I have 5 grandkids and a dog, and they're outside a lot. We keep our eyes on them all the time, but hey, one little mistake and somebody running through there and just blowing through that stop sign could be trouble for me. So I'm adamantly opposed to the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanderson.
My name is Edith Udofia, and I live in 1903 James Drive. If you come in to Love Court, it empties in my driveway. So I know all these folks that walk their dogs. I can tell you how much the elderly used that street. In 1998, when I was looking for a property to buy, I drove around Murfreesboro. What was so impressed about Hens Haven was the residential and peaceful atmosphere that I experienced. And that was what prompted me to buy a property in there. I wouldn't want to see that changed. I see a lot of elderly men and women move to that community, and they walk very late at night, in the afternoon, in the mornings, and it is just one of the best places to live in Murfreesboro. So some of us who, when we come back from work, we want to come and rest peacefully in our homes. I want you in this commission tonight to think about 3 things: life, life, and life. Because I sit there in my house and I watch children in that community walk to school every day and walk back home. And I am scared just hearing about trying to bring a commercial or change this to a commercial area. I'm really worried about the lives of all those children. I'm worried about the lives of the elderly men and women, mostly who walk alone, late in the afternoon, early in the morning, and late at night. I am worried about what one property is going to bring to that community and how it is going to change the entire outlook of that community. That is why I come and ask you to oppose the setting up or the changing of this into any other community than the residential that it has always been, something that attracted people like me and I believe some of us to this community.
Thank you, Mr. Kodavia. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Tawana Roberts, and my husband Steve and I live at 1858 James Drive, and this is where we have raised our children, which are grown now, for 22 years. I love the community because it is neighborhood, it's families. I've grown up, I know a lot of people here. We watch children grow and see grandchildren run around now. My question is to the chairman and members to please hear what us neighbors are asking, and maybe put it into your seat of how you would feel if this was in your neighborhood. Because once something is zoned commercial, my question is going to be, what's the future going to be? There's no promises that a liquor store will be there, a tattoo parlor. That's not the kind of neighbors that we have in our community. We have very hardworking, retired, some still working, that love their community, love Murfreesboro, and we love Haynes Haven. And on the sign years ago, it used to say, a good place to call home, and it's my home for 22 years. And I ask all of you sitting here to please hear what we have to say. We want to live there and continue to grow old and enjoy our home, our neighborhood, and that's my request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts.
Good evening. My name is Linda Pritchard. My husband Steve and our two they were young sons when we moved there. We have two boys, and we have lived at 126 Love Court for 28 years. And like my friends and neighbors, we love our quiet, peaceful neighborhood. And you've heard all of the reasons, and I agree with those reasons, and that is why I would oppose this proposition to rezone. And I just want to reiterate that it is in very close proximity to Northfield Elementary School, and we do have both old and young residents, and we do have all of the walkers, and I just would please ask you not to disturb our peaceful neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pritchard. Anybody else?
Hello, I'm Katie Kemp. I live at 126 Haynes Haven Lane. This property is less than a block from my house, and I'm one of the walkers with the dog. And I'd very much appreciate you voting against rezoning this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kemp. Anybody else?
Good evening. My name is Ellen Scudder, and I live at 403 Peacock Avenue. Although this property is not close to me, my husband and I and our children have experienced the traffic has come from the Saddlebrook apartments down the street from us. We know what added traffic is like. Someone was saying that their traffic stop sign is like a yield sign. Well, I agree, because at the corner of Peacock, where my house is, and Haynes Haven, it's not even ignored. It's just run through. We don't even know what's going to happen. And sometimes we've had some very close calls and finding cars in our front yard. We're worried and concerned about this venture, about changing, because this, our property, our house, is our largest investment that my husband and I have made. And we're terribly afraid that our property value is going to decrease. Although I don't see our taxes decreasing because of what is going to come tonight. But we are afraid that our property value is going to decrease. We built in Haynes Haven because we were told by Roy Waldron, because he sold us our property, that there was a promise that there would be no commercial venture in our neighborhood. It was going to be strictly residential. It was planned to be a quiet neighborhood. We knew about the PUDs homes that were going to be eventually built. And he kind of sort of mentioned the apartment houses, but he said that's so far down the road you don't even have to worry about it. Well, we worry about it when we find a car in our front yard. But now we're fixing to change again. We built on a promise. We built on a knowledge that we wanted our children to grow. And they have flourished. We have enjoyed our neighbors, and our neighbors have enjoyed my husband walking our Basset. Yeah, I'm Ruby's mama. But the thing of it is, we're quiet. We enjoy our neighborhood, and we want to keep it that way. That's what we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scudder. Anybody else?
Good evening. Betty Chambers. I live at 1907 James Drive. My husband and I and our now grown children have lived there for almost 19 years. And for all the reasons that all the ones who have gone before me have noted, it's a wonderful place to live. Again, the traffic is one of my main concerns, other than really just being opposed to anything commercial in our neighborhood. It is a residential neighborhood, and that's the way it was designed. The traffic on our street, like Dr. Perunjere said, is a cut-through from Haynes Haven Lane through James Drive to Northfield, just as Love Court is. Our stop sign, which there is only a two-way stop at our corner of James and Haynes Haven, and at best, people slow down. There have been numerous accidents there, overturned vehicles. One young lady who lived down the street ended with a broken leg when someone ran the stop sign. And, just comforting these people who have accidents is very difficult circumstance. So the traffic that's already on Northfield is a nightmare. And as I think someone said, turning left, especially left, is very treacherous. And many times we do need to turn left. My mom lives in that direction, my church is in that direction, my groceries in that direction. So a lot of times I just go the back way, which puts more traffic into the residential neighborhoods rather than traveling the main road. But for safety's sake, I do that sometimes. So again, for all the reasons that have been stated by all the other residents, I am opposed to it, and I request that you consider all these things.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers.
My name is Crystal Warren, and I live on 307 Kevin Drive. My home is about in the middle of the neighborhood. I'm not too far beyond Peacock, so as far as a direct cut through, I'm not as affected, but I am one of the moms with children that walk to Northfield. I have a rising kindergartner and a rising second grader, and every day my daughter asks me, I accompany them every day, and every day she says, when can we walk on our own? When can we walk on our own? And I hope that one day I feel comfortable with her walking on her own. And I feel that this is a neighborhood that, like others have said, we enjoy the peace and quiet of a neighborhood and a tight-knit community, while the conveniences of everything around the corner. Our neighborhood, while it's more established and before there's fancy homeowners association, our neighborhood still rallied around updating signage to our neighborhood, and we take a lot of pride in our neighborhood. The city was very gracious and let us update the entrance that's right beside to our neighborhood, which is right beside Adams Place, and we just ask to vote against this rezoning for commercial property and let the city protect us on our side of Memorial for any further commercial land.
Thank you, Ms. Warren. Anybody?
My name is Bobby Strickland. I live at 110 Love Court. And we all know that if this council goes ahead and lets this lot go commercial, the turnip patch is next. And I strongly oppose to it.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Anybody else?
I'm Steve Decker. I live on 119 Love Court. Very glad to meet my neighbors here, some I have not met before. I also teach speech at MTSU, and these folks have done a brilliant job with some great arguments. So thank you. I can't add to them. However, I just want to record that I am opposed to this decision to turn it into a business property.
The decision's not been made yet, Mr. Decker, but thank you for your comments.
My name's Don Whitfield. I live at 206 Hayneshaven Lane, and as my neighbors have so eloquently spoken already, I think we're all opposed to this change from residential to commercial. It's a residential neighborhood. That's what it was meant to be, and that's what we would like for it to remain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Whitfield. Have we got everybody? Anybody else? Last call. In that case, I'll close the public hearing. Any questions from members of the Planning Commission for the applicant, or do you have anything you'd like to say, sir?
Chairman, I'd like to thank the neighborhood first for taking the time to participate in this process, because that's an educational process for everyone involved, including myself. I did speak to the owner of the property, at least the owner's representative, knowing that this was going to be something of a contentious issue. And his request was asked to defer this vote until we come to a more viable plan. I would love to hear any conversation that the Planning Commission would have in terms of helping us understand some direction. But it's obvious that there's a lot of work to be done with the neighborhood if our client is to have any success in moving this forward. So with that request, I'd ask that we would defer this until further notice. So,
okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I cannot take questions from the audience. Discussion for the Planning Commission.
Joseph, and I appreciate Mr. Roundtree's suggestion or request, but deferring it just means it would come back again for us to eventually vote on the request of the commercial highway. If they're wanting to bring back something else that they perhaps can work out with the neighborhood, that may actually end up being a whole different zoning classification request or even a PUD, from what I'm gathering that he's implying to us, which in that situation we'd be better off to just go ahead to deny this and then let them bring back a fresh application. Can you give me some guidance on that thought process I'm having?
That's probably the best approach. Denial by the Plan Commission does not mean permanent denial. Right. It doesn't mean that they can't come back with another application. Were it to get to the City Council and be denied, it would be denied for 18 months and could not come back. However, a denial by the Plan Commission, if they continue to work with their plans, they're free to come back. What I think Mr. Browntree is asking maybe is that he realizes, and particularly after discussion with me this afternoon, that first of all, the property is very, very limited. It's 0.58 acres. It's 1/2 acre. The ability to place a viable commercial structure on that, meet the city's development requirements, and provide effective screening to the adjacent properties is very, very limited. It's going to be a very small building, a very small parking lot, and that calls into question just how viable would it be. In fact, the question in my mind arises, would it just be better to remain residential, and would that be a more viable use? Because the parking that's inherent with commercial would not be there for residential. So that's something that I think that they are maybe wanting to investigate a little bit, footprint some ideas, see what it would do. Also, I think that they may feel that they better, next time before they come back to the Planning Commission, they might not have a neighborhood meeting where these issues are sorted out. It may be a different setting. If the neighborhood were supportive, I think that it would be a whole different issue if they came back. The neighborhood, and you all are very, very effective. I knew when I saw Mr. Wood come to the county the other day, and you know, I've been in this position quite a number of years. I've had an opportunity to participate in public hearings. I hate saying this, and it was younger faces back then. Now it's faces that are mature like mine, I'm afraid. But the thing is, you're very organized. You care about your neighborhood, and I think that has made a very big impression on the Planning Commission. I think it's made an impression upon the applicant. Sometimes you just got to test the water to find out where you stand. One thing I do want to caution the neighborhood about: be careful what you ask for, because what you get might turn out to be different than what you thought you'd be getting. What you don't want is a cheap, ratty, rundown house that is built to spite you. Now, I'm not making that as a threat. Please don't, because I'm not. But what I do think is, hear people out the plans. You might find out that what they have to offer may be better than what you might be getting. But I don't think that it is something that the Planning Commission needs to consider tonight. I think what you need to do is send a message. Plain commercial fringe or commercial highway may not be what you think this property ought to be zoned. That perhaps a planned development that addresses the neighborhood's concerns might, for some type of uses, might be appropriate. But that can all be sorted out by meeting with the neighborhood and working an application before it ever comes back.
You stole my thunder somewhat on complimenting the neighborhood for coming. I think you were very well spoken and did a very good job, and you kept your comments and addressed the issues directly. So my compliments to all of you for coming tonight and participating in this process. My history of Memorial goes back many, many years. It would belie my age if I started telling you. But, there were 4 residential lots in Haynes Haven fronting onto Memorial. And, of course, one of those was taken by the Adams Place, and it's still residential, as Mr. Woods pointed out, which is a good point. The other 2, the Turnip Green lot and this lot, for commercial highway uses, in my opinion, it's certainly not appropriate. Now, if there's anything else short of then a house being built there, I'd like to see what it was and know exactly what was coming in there before we made some type of agreement to recommend a zoning change to the City Council. But as this is right here, I cannot support it and will not in the future. So I'd be glad to hear from other members of the Planning Commission.
I would also say that tonight, just the request in general, I don't see any reason to defer. I don't really understand the request. You certainly have the right to bring the request forward and let us hear it and let them and hear from the neighbors as well. But I don't. I can't even really imagine right now what you could bring forward that would be commercial that I would think might go right there. But I'm not very good at visualizing all that stuff. You might come up with something, but I would not be in favor of this, and I would not be in favor of deferring it.
Would you like to make a motion?
No, I'll let everybody else win.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we request denial.
That you recommend denial.
That's correct.
The motion is made to deny. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Good job. Thank you once again for coming and participating tonight, folks. We'll move on to our next public hearing. The next public hearing is a sign ordinance amendments for signs on single buildings, on single lots, with a single tenant in PCD, PID, and PUD, and within the GDO 1. Let me hold this for a second.
Take one and pass it. Mr. Chairman. Pass it.
Let me stand.
Okay, let me go back and restate what I was doing here. The next public hearing is pertaining to a sign ordinance amendments for signs on single buildings, on single lots, with single tenants in the PCD, PID, PUD, and within the GDO 1, 2, 3, and 4 overlay districts in order to, 1, eliminate limitation on the number of attached tenant signs on each of the exterior wall and on the building as a whole. And 2, to allow up to 1 square feet, it says here, of signage for each 1 linear foot of exterior wall to which the signs will be attached, and amendments to change in the manner in which the display surface area for the attached signs is calculated for signs throughout the city. I know that was a mouthful, and I'm sorry to struggle through it like that, but I did the best I can. I guess Mr. Whitaker probably wrote that and gave it to you, Mr. Adelon.
Actually, I wrote that using what Mr. Ives had given me, and that's a good handoff.
Oh, well, the legal department had their hand in it. Well, thank you, Mr. Ives. I appreciate it. Very well done. Ms. Green, or who would like to be the staff compliment on this?
Mr. Ives asked
Mr. Ives, you deserve this, Mr. Ives.
At least I don't have quite such a hostile crowd here tonight. That doesn't look like for this item. But I do need to go through it for your information again, as well as if anyone here that does want to speak on this. We have been working for some time, code staff and myself, on some amendments to the sign ordinance, and there is one amendment that we think is somewhat small, but yet it's critical to one issue, and we're wanting to go ahead and propose that amendment now. And there's 3 things being changed in 2 amendments. And what's first on the amendment that is attached to with the materials, what we presented at the last meeting and what's in your agenda materials. The first amendment there changes the way that we would measure signs. This change would be effective in all zoning districts for all signs. Currently, under our sign ordinance, if a sign is placed on an internally illuminated surface, the entire internally illuminated surface is counted as part of the sign. What we're proposing to do is differentiate between the surfaces that are intended to be a part of a sign and those surfaces that are not intended to be part of a sign. So, for instance, right now, if a sign was hung on the back wall, only the sign area would be counted. If, however, that back wall were glass or some translucent surface and a sign was hung on it, then the entire wall would be counted as a sign. And we've concluded and had been working on this for some time, but concluded that that's really an inappropriate way to measure it. So the amendment, that's the first amendment, or Section 1 to the ordinance that's attached, is changing it so that only that part that appears to be, or that is intended to be part of the sign, is going to be counted as a sign. The second amendment, or the second section of the amendment, the second amendment on the ordinance, is designed to do 2 things. And the first one is to eliminate a restriction on the number of attached signs that can be put on a given exterior wall or building elevation. Currently, there are different numbers in different zoning districts, but after discussions with other cities and looking at other ordinances and looking at the results of other ordinances, we feel that the appropriate limitation is to put a limitation on the total signage allowable on an elevation and allow the occupants to decide how they want to break it up. And if they want 2 signs or 3 signs or 4 signs, as long as the total square footage of signage does not exceed a reasonable amount, we feel that should be their discretion and could vary by the type of business it is. So we've eliminated the number restriction on how many attached signs can be on an elevation, and more accurately, we're proposing to eliminate the number restriction on the signs on a building. The second part of that amendment, and this is modified just a little bit by what I handed out tonight, we had concluded that for most businesses, a a simple limitation of 1 square foot of signage for each 1 linear foot of building elevation is a good measure. And that's exactly how we had proposed it a couple of weeks ago when we presented this to you, was simply that the maximum attached, no, we're talking about attached signage, only signage that's attached to the surface, not the freestanding sign that's out by the street. But for the attached sign, it would be 1 square foot of signage for each 1 linear foot of building elevation. Our current system has a variety of measurements, and it's different if you're within 40 foot of a right-of-way or if you're between 40 and 100 foot from the right-of-way, and so it's very complicated and it's very confusing to try to run through it, and the numbers are slightly different for most of the commercial and office zoning districts, but they're not that different, but they are different and enough to make it very confusing for people. Ultimately, we intend to propose this same amendment for all commercial and office zoning districts. But to make sure we don't do something that we regret, we want to make the change first in one specific zoning district, be able to work with that for a while as we're continuing to work on the rest of our amendments. So this, the second amendment would apply only to the current designation of, you said it so well, but I'll try to repeat it. The current designation of PCD, PID, PUD districts, and within the BP, GDO1, GDO2, GDO3, and GDO4 overlay districts. And that amendment then would again eliminate the limitation on the number of signs, and would say that the combined display surface for all the attached signs on an elevation will not exceed 1 square foot for each linear foot, and what we've added in what we handed out tonight, or 50 square feet, whichever is greater. The reason for this addition is that for a small storefront of 25 or 30 feet, which is not too uncommon, I don't think, or 40 feet in a strip center, they would get less signage under the 1-for-1 than they get under today's ordinance. And it's not our intent in any of the things that we're doing to reduce signage. In a number of cases, we're actually proposing to increase the allowable signage. So we believe that that is the right number to avoid a conflict as this comes out to the public and to the sign industry and our business community. And if we hear back from them and if we start finding some examples where 50 is not the right number, we may be coming back to amend that again either before council or sometime during the council proceedings. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll try to answer them. Mr. Whitaker's here. Ms. Kerr is also here. If there's some specifics about more details of the current sign ordinance and how the change would impact that, they may be better able to speak to that than I can.
Chairman Lamb, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
So I get a little confused. Let's say we have a building that you could say that fronts on 2 or 3 sides, meaning that it's exposed on 2 parallel roads, and then it's got one that's perpendicular, so you could it's on 3 sides. Mm-hmm. So are we saying that the linear feet equation that would allow them or would limit them, or whatever the maximum would be with respects to the linear feet of each one of those sides, or just what we designate as the frontage of the building? And then how are we going to designate what is the frontage of the building?
We're looking at this as each wall would be an elevation or an exterior wall, and there'd be under this a building could have 4-sided signage.
Okay.
A single-tenant building that's made in 4 walls, with a square building with 4 walls, could have signs on all 4 sides.
Okay.
And if it's a 100-foot on one side and 200-foot on the other side, then there's only 2 sides, let's say, are exposed, where it'd make any sense to, you don't spend a lot of money on a sign that's at the back of the house that nobody can
Right.
see. But if you've got 2 elevations, one's 100-foot long, one's 200-foot long, each one of those is going to count separate for the signage that would be allowed on that elevation.
Mrs. Kerr.
Did I say that right?
That is correct. I just kind of want to reiterate what Mr. Ives has already said. This will simplify, this proposed ordinance amendment would simplify what we currently have in our ordinance, which can be sometimes very confusing for individuals, business owners, sign companies. It's explaining it time and again, and this would make it a lot simpler for them to be able to understand it. Plus, we feel like it would be very fair to businesses that are a long way off the road. Instead of trying to do it by the number of feet that they're off the road, and restricting it to the size of sign that they can have and the number of signs they can have, this gives them the opportunity, based upon how big their store is, how much signage they're allowed to have. We are looking, as Mr. Ives said, to put this in place throughout the city of Murfreesboro in commercial zones, and I believe that that would be beneficial for the businesses in Murfreesboro.
Thank you, Ms. Kerr.
I can answer any other questions.
Thank you. We have to have sign ordinances. Regulation of signs, unfortunately, is a necessity. I've been involved in this with the city government for over 25 years, and it's a moving target that we try to keep updated and keep addressed on a continuing basis. And it's a thin line sometimes between what the city council and planning commission and the staff feel would be aesthetically pleasing for the community and what is overly restrictive for businesses. So to get that happy medium in there is very difficult, I think, a lot of times. But I want to commend the staff, because I know you guys work tirelessly and continually every year. I think in the years we've been on this planning commission, those that have been on it for a long time with me, we've seen sign ordinance amendments come up quite often, practically every year, it seems like. But and that just shows the staff is continually trying to update and increase the fairness of the sign ordinance, not just overly regulate things all the time, too, to keep up with changing technology and everything to do with that. So thank you so much for your hard work. We need to conduct a public hearing on this evening. If there's no further questions, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing in case there's anybody here that I can't see other than Mr. Roundtree that would like to speak. Please come forward. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any comments or questions by the Planning Commission? If not, we're ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion we approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. The motion carries. That concludes the public hearing portion of our agenda. We move on to...
Can I interrupt and make one comment before we go to staff comments? Because I'd just like to say for the record that I believe I misspoke when I made my comments earlier about Love Court, because I spoke directly to Mr. Roundtree about his proposal and everything. And I just want to confirm that he was presenting his client's proposal just like we're doing our duty to listen to what they have to say, and he's doing his duty to present his proposal. So I didn't mean to direct that at Mr. Roundtree.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
And I can't think until I say that.
Well said. Thank you. We'll move on to staff reports and other business. The first item under that is the election of a chair and vice chair for 2014-2015. Mr. Adelot.
Yes, sir. The rules of procedure for the Murfreesboro Planning Commission specify that the chair and vice chair of the Planning Commission shall be elected each year for a one-year term by the Commission from among its members at their first regular meeting in July of each year. This is the first meeting in July. Accordingly, it is the responsibility of the Planning Commission members to nominate and elect the chair and a vice chair. There should be separate motions for each. You are...
Any discussion?
To do your duty.
Mr. Adelot, I make a motion that Mr. Bob Lamb would be the chair of the Planning Commission.
Second that motion.
Motion is made and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Maybe. Is there another motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
Say Mr. Clark.
Mr. Clark.
I would like to make a motion that for the 2014-2015 year that we will elect, or I'd like to nominate Mr. Doug Young as Vice Chairman.
That's Vice Mayor Young.
Vice Mayor Young.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I think that was unanimous, so congratulations to Mr. Young. The next item is the comprehensive plan. Mr. Adelot, I presume.
Yes, sir. Hopefully you received either a package or in your Plan Commission agenda today, when you booted it up, a copy of the proposal that, or package that Mr. Lyons has prepared for the City Council. It should look something like this in a hard copy. We tried to get couriers to you. This has been something that our administrative staff worked on for the agenda right down to the wire yesterday, so we were able to get it out today to you. This includes a letter, as I said, from Mr. Lyons, but it also includes the scope of services. The scope of services is just about 50 pages. It's got a lot of detail. What it includes is the work that the consultant will actually do. A couple of things I want to point out to you. It includes a very heavy amount of public engagement through various venues. It includes focus groups. It includes interviews. It also will include a task force of such advisory committee that is to include 2 Planning Commission members and 2 council members. Those are to be determined later, who they will be. But that will be part of a focus group that will assist the consultant in his preparation of the plan and ultimately move it towards adoption. Ultimately, the Plan Commission will be required to have a public hearing and be called upon to adopt the plan at some point in the future. So it will be something that will involve the Plan Commission. There will be joint sessions of the Plan Commission and the City Council, and there will be direct presentations to the Plan Commission. One of the things I want to kind of point out to you on page 4 of 30, it gives a little bit of a rundown of actually on page 3 of 30, it goes through some of the public engagement and goals, and it talks a little bit about those. I'm not going to go through all that, but I want to assure you that it does have a large number of opportunities for the public to participate in this process. This is going to the council as a contract tomorrow night. What we want to do tonight is to basically allow you to know about it, also to let you have some degree of familiarity with it, also get you primed for activity that will be coming your way soon, and to point out to you and to help the public who may be watching to know that there will be a lot of opportunity to participate in this. The contract that I failed to mention it will be with Kindig Keast. The company was chosen by a committee appointed by the mayor. Mr. Lamb and I served on that committee. Of the presentations we saw, I think they were probably they were the very best. It was a unanimous choice by the group at the end of the presentations that we choose this company. I think in putting together this scope of services and contract, we found that they're good to work with already. We've are beginning to build a relationship with them, and we're looking forward to working with them as a staff.
Okay. What action you would like us to take on this?
I think our city manager would be very happy if the Planning Commission were to endorse this and say that you know about it and are ready to move forward.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the Planning Commission?
Very professionally done.
It's very well done. There's a lot of work gone into it already, and there'll be a continuing lot of work going into the comprehensive plan. So, if there's no questions or comments, other comments, we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion. I guess, move forward.
Second that motion.
Motion made to move forward or endorse this proposal. It's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Adelot, do you have anything else?
Yes, sir, we do. We have an item of other business that Mr. Ives would like to bring to your attention.
This one.
I do. He looked at you and said, I do.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Mr. Ives, I told you I wrote it down. Parking license agreement for MTSU involving a structure on the city's parking lot associated with a flight simulator.
Yes, I was just reading this.
It does. It rings a small bell. Thank you. MTSU is soon to be constructing a new simulator lab on a portion of the parking lot that they have constructed out there to serve the Gene A. Jack Flight Education Building. With that, of course, they're going to be short parking. I would expect that most of that parking lot will be unavailable during the period of construction, and once the new building is open, roughly half of it will be covered by the building footprint. We've been working for some time about how to get them some temporary parking, and what we have come up with is a license agreement to allow them to utilize a portion of the spaces that are on the McKnight Park area, and it's shown on the attachment there, the last page of what was handed out. The parking area there for McKnight, that area is not heavily utilized except on special events, spring fling and some tournaments. It's quite heavily utilized, and sometimes it's available only for paid parking. The university realizes that, and at the times that that thing is full or being used only for paid parking, they'll have to either walk further. We don't like this, but sometimes people are probably going to be sometimes parking on the grass on a temporary basis. They will be, we have a fairly good-sized area out there on the airport master plan is designated for MTSU's campus expansion, the airport campus. And of course, they only lease what they're actually using. We anticipate that there will be plans in the relatively near future to start toward looking at where we and they would want to put another parking lot for some additional parking. Most likely it would be just for them, and it would be their parking lot. There's always, I guess, a possibility that for some reason we would conclude that a parking lot would serve both the city airport operations and the university's operations, and we would come back proposing some sort of a joint cost for construction. But that's way in the future. At this point, we simply want, because this is a change in use of city property, we would like to have the Planning Commission look at it and ask your approval of it. We are intending to have this on other business, on consent agenda tomorrow night for the council meeting.
Okay.
And we would like to go ahead and have you take a look at this and see if you have any concerns, questions, comments.
The only question I have is approximately what is the amount of time that the building will be on construction, the use of this?
The building, they're trying to move quickly to start construction, and I think their site plans is an administrative review, isn't it, Joseph?
Yes, it will be. We've been looking at the site plan.
Been looking at site plan. I don't think it's approved yet, but it's in process. So I would anticipate, of course, they'll have to bid, and that takes a little longer, but I would say well before the end of the year they'd be under construction.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ives. Any other comments or questions from the Planning Commission? If not, we need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the parking license agreement as presented.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Adelot, anything else?
No, sir.
There's no other business. We stand adjourned.